record. So hi everyone, it's really good to see you all. My name is Annie Fortnow, for those who I don't know, and I work at Jump Spark, and we are the Jewish Teen Initiative at the Federation, Jewish Federation of Greater Atlanta. So it's really good to see you all. And we run different programs for Jewish teens, parents of teens, and professionals that work with teens. And we're really excited to do this event tonight in partnership with the Jewish Education Collaborative, also an initiative out of the Federation that's working to enhance Jewish education and Jewish supplemental education. So I'm really excited to be able to introduce our speaker tonight, Faun Zarge, who is truly incredible. And I could go on about how she is an amazing expert in her field of resiliency and burnout. She's had more than 20 years of experience as a trainer and coach. She's been quoted in numerous media outlets, but I also wanted to share some personal anecdotes about getting to know Faun as we've been preparing for this event. She's really been truly incredible in terms of really caring about what's going on in our community, trying to get the pulse of the community. She's been open to really customizing the session for our needs. And at every step, she's been asking, like, what's going on in the community? How would your professionals respond to this? So we know that she's really putting her full self into this event and is really here to work with us as like the Jewish Atlanta community. And I was super impressed. One time I was working late and she responded to an email that I had sent, and she said, please get off your computer so that you don't burn out. So I really know that she is totally committed to this idea of combating burnout and helping us all create like more resilient workspaces and work lives. So without further ado, I would love to introduce Faun, and you can take it away.
Thank you so much, Annie. That's one of the kindest introductions I've ever received. So thank you very much. And I am so excited to be with all of you tonight. Thank you for logging in. I know logging on to another Zoom at 7 p.m. is not always so easy to do. I'm sure it was tempting to skip this, even if the topic was interesting to you. So I'm delighted to be with you. And I'm especially excited to be with a bunch of educators, Jewish educators, people working in the field of Jewish education, because I have to confess that when I was a kid, I was that kid who loved Hebrew school. And then after Hebrew school is over, I was a kid who was dying to go to Hebrew high school at night after a full day of public school. And now I'm the adult, I guess, that is jealous of my parents who are retired and get to attend all these cool Jewish adult learning sessions. So you guys are my heroes, and you guys do incredible work. And I know that it's a diverse crowd here tonight. Some of you are in this full-time. This is what you do all the time. Some of you are part-time. Some of you, probably a lot of you, wear many, many different hats, have different responsibilities in your organization. And so I'm going to really try as best I can to speak to all of the things that are on your mind tonight. Our biggest challenge tonight is going to be time, because I wish that we had 3 hours together in a room together, no less, maybe with some bagels or cocktails, one of the two, and we could really dive in even more deeply. But we're going to try to cover as much as we can. And my goal here tonight is for you to leave here with at least a couple more tools that you feel like you can put into practice right away. And so just to give you a sense, we're going to spend some time talking about your personal wellness, because how you show up and how you are taking care of yourself is really going to make a big difference in preventing burnout. And then we're also going to spend some time talking about the tactical, the day-to-day. How do you navigate that? So you can see why we will be limited in time to get all of it covered. But I do want to hear what will make this valuable to you today. What are you thinking right now? Like, please do not let the end of the hour come up without covering this. And I encourage you you can use the chat. Anyone who wants to ask a question privately, you can send it just to me and I'll ask it anonymously. But it's, awesome if you guys are comfortable taking your microphones off mute and jumping in. The more conversational this is, I think the better it will be. So anyone, what would you like to hear? What brought you to the session today? Go ahead, Susan. Thank you.
I'm just going to go out on a limb here. I think, well, what brought me here is a friend emailed me about it, and it sounded really wonderful. But one thing I'm hoping to walk away with is I'm sort of navigating the many emotions that we're feeling, meaning how we can feel such gratitude in one hand for family or for health, whatever it is, while also being angry at the world or, right? So holding them together, I'm hoping that we can talk about that a little bit.
Awesome, thank you. Anything else? I know that someone sent in, there was a couple questions that came in, and I know certainly that everyone is trying to figure out how do I navigate all this while I have these complex things going on in my personal life as well. And so I just want to call that out there, that I know that everybody is sitting here with very different personal lives, right? Some of you may have young children at home or kids at home who are studying, or in my case, I have a college kid who just came home. Some of you are taking care of older parents. Some of you may be feeling very isolated. Maybe you live by yourself or live with a roommate that you didn't plan to spend 24/7 with. You thought they would be good in the evenings and the weekends. So there are a lot of things that are going on for folks. And so we're gonna, hopefully a lot of the tools that we talk about will help you navigate those things as well. So jump in anytime with questions. I'll tell you very quickly, I'll show you sort of what we're gonna cover today. Here we go. Very simply, we're gonna figure out realistic ways to make taking care of yourself part of what you do. We're gonna talk about how to sort of set those boundaries so that you can actually get done what you need to get done, feel like you can focus on what you need to focus on, but not, wreck sort of relationships in the process. And that's a hard thing for a lot of folks to do. And we're going to talk about how to deal with the overload. But the first thing that I want to do is I want to just talk a little bit about what burnout is. And I'm going to do that by showing you, yes, shopping carts. I know you're probably wondering, why is Faun showing us shopping carts? Okay, so let me tell you about these shopping carts. So these shopping carts belong to a fairly new supermarket close to me. I was very excited. It was going to be a very convenient supermarket, nearby, didn't have one of those. But I was also very excited about the shopping carts. And why? Because they are brand new. And think about it, when you've gone to the store and you grab a cart outside and you get into the store and you're probably about 40 feet in, 50 feet in, and that's when you realize you have a bum cart. You know what I'm talking about? One of those carts that only goes left, no matter how hard you try to push that thing straight, right? Or it's so loud. And so at that moment, you have to decide, how many things do I have on my list? You're doing that calculus. Can I deal with this and get what I need? Or do I have to go all the way back out and exchange the cart for another one? That is kind of the difference between stress and burnout. Stress is when you're pushing that cart through the store for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. It's tolerable, you can deal with it. It's a pain, but you can deal with it. Burnout is sort of like pushing that cart through the store 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, right? That is not tolerable. And I call this out, not because we're going to dive into all of the details of what burnout is, but it's extremely important for all of you, for yourselves, for the colleagues you work with, to really understand what those differences are, because burnout doesn't just show up overnight, right? Like many of us will say, oh, I'm so burnt out. And most of us aren't when we say that. But people do get to burnout, and it is a huge problem in this country. And certainly, if you are burning the candle at both ends and then dealing with all that we've been dealing with in this pandemic, you could be approaching that. And so you need to know sort of what it is and when it shows up. And very, very simply, burnout is really when you have too many demands, too few resources, and not enough time to recover. Let me just say that again, because I really want you to understand that. It's about having too many demands, too few resources, and not enough time to recover. And it doesn't show up the same way in all of us, right? For some of us, it's going to be real physical exhaustion, that feeling of like, I can't get out of bed. Right? Or I'm no longer excited to go to work. I used to be really sort of jazzed about going to my job every day, and now I'm having a hard time doing that. Other people become much more cynical, or you might start to feel like you're being ineffective. And you don't have to have all of these things show up at once. But I sort of put that out there to you here in the beginning of the session because I want you to pay attention to those things, because obviously we want to intervene before you get there. But if you're starting to experience them, or you have been, or your colleagues are, then it's really time to do something about it. And you can turn it around, but I just want you to sort of to think about that as a starting point. Now, because I want you to be able to think about this session from a very personal perspective, I'm going to ask you for a moment to take anything you have to write on. I just want you to grab paper and pen And what I want you to write down, and I'll put this up here for our visual folks so you can see it. I want you to just write down very quickly the 3 biggest priorities in your life in order. And this encompasses your entire life, work and personal life. So your 3 biggest priorities in order. So go ahead and take a minute to do that. And when you've done that, if you feel comfortable putting them into the chat, go for it. I will ask you guys to share, but nobody has to. So I should have said that in the beginning. I want you to, most important is to be honest with yourself here. All right, so I see some coming in. Relationships, creativity, joy, family, parents, job, eating, sleeping, work. I see Zoom with my G. I'm not sure who G is, but I'm assuming it's somebody special. Family, health, personal growth, and meaning. A lot of family first, relationships with friends, work, family, happiness, work. Give you just a few more seconds. I see a few people finishing up. Health of my family, maintaining healthy relationships with friends, self-care. Ooh, I came in 3rd. Okay. Okay, awesome. So let me just, Nancy, I'm going to call you out because you sort of mentioned this. So far as I could see, Nancy is the only person who put herself on the list. Did anybody else put themselves on the list at all? Tell me if you did. Anyone?
I mean, I would say happiness could be like for it. So I put
Okay.
that.
All right, we're going to give it to you, Erica. All right.
And I put peacefulness, like internal feelings of peace. I kind of feel like it was the same thing.
Okay, good. All right. But the vast majority of you did not put yourselves on your list anywhere, correct? And did any, I see a little, okay, maybe a little bit. And did anybody put themselves first on their list? Robin, you did. Awesome. Okay, and Robin, what was on your list? It was yourself and what else?
I put health because to keep yourself healthy. I mean, during this pandemic especially, this is the first thing that's going to go. And health is everything, your mind especially, but health, just staying healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm really glad you did it. I'm glad you're sharing it with everybody. Robin is going to be our poster child for taking care of yourself. This is so unbelievably important. Let me ask you a question for those of you who didn't, because for those of you who didn't, I don't want you to feel badly because this is really the norm. Why did you not put yourself on the list? All right, I'm going to answer for you because I know what many of you are thinking. I've heard this over and over again. People will say,
you think about.
Right, yes. That's right. Sometimes people say, it never even occurred to me, right? Never even occurred to me to put myself on the list. Yeah, I hear that. Oftentimes I'll hear people say, it just feels selfish. Other people need me first. And sometimes people just say, the other priorities, I have to take care of my family first. I have to take care of my job responsibilities. Okay, so here's where I'm really going to challenge you. And this is one of the most important pieces of preventing burnout. You absolutely 100% have to be on the top of that list. And let me explain why. Think of yourselves as a bank. We all know how they work, right? Money in, money out. We know what happens if you keep taking money out of the bank and you haven't made any deposits, right? Eventually you're overdrawn. So in our lives, we have people making withdrawals from us all the time, right? Our family, whether it's kids, parents, partners, friends who need help moving or want guidance on their job search, your colleagues who need things, right? Your community, volunteer commitments that you have, work responsibilities. And none of those things are bad. I'm not suggesting that you get rid of any of them. Those are actually things that make our lives really enriching. I mean, you may have some people making withdrawals in your life that you'd prefer not. But in general, that's actually what adds a lot of sort of richness to our lives. The problem isn't necessarily all the withdrawals, is that we're not making deposits. We're not taking care of ourselves. And what is, I think, really important to understand is that this isn't something that is sort of, oh, that's a good idea. That's a good thing to do. It's more than that. It's actually your responsibility, because it's the only way that you're going to show up in your jobs being able to be as creative as you have to be in your jobs. You guys have had to reinvent how Jewish education happens over this past year. You've had to reinvent how you maintain relationships or build new relationships, right? And all the different facets of your job. And you've got to be able to really show up like ready to go and be able to connect dots and be creative. And you have to be able to, if you want to be there for your family, you've got to have something left in you, right? You know that feeling when you're totally depleted and someone in your family, because it's usually someone in your family, they ask you something and you bark at them, right? Because you're just done. You don't have anything left. So it's really your responsibility to do that. And that is a key in preventing burnout. Now, we're going to talk about some of the other ways that you sort of fill that bank. But first, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to stand up. I hope everybody's wearing pants. You can turn your cameras off though for 1 minute. I'm going to ask you to get up and just go move for 1 minute. You can do anything you want. You can do push-ups on the floor. You can stretch. You can do laps around your house. Come back in 1 minute though. We don't have much time. For those of you who are coming back, feel free to put in the chat what it is that you went and did, if you want to. You don't have to say if you don't want. Everybody's coming back. So I see stretching. And you can also take your microphone off mute and tell us aloud if you prefer. I see a lot of stretching. I guess it's, I don't think I've ever seen so much stretching. You guys needed to stretch. Oh, someone gave their spouse a hug. That's so nice. Walked up and down the stairs. Usually somebody goes to the bathroom. Maybe no one's fessing up to that. Went to check on their kids. Good. Okay. And so now, even more importantly than what you did, someone tell me, how did that feel? Thumbs up, was it good? Yeah, right. So why did I have you do that? Because we do not do that during the day, right? What happens when you're feeling overwhelmed and overloaded? You just put your head down and you just go and you go and you go and you go and you don't stop, right? I so rely on my Fitbit to tell me, every hour if I haven't had enough steps, right? Because when I'm in that zone, then I got to get up and I'll walk around. We cannot go like that. We're not designed to do that. Just like when you think about your competitive athletes, your Olympians, right? They don't train hard all the time. What do? Interval training, you've all heard of it, right? You train hard and then you rest, you recover, because then your muscle fibers rebuild themselves and you're stronger and you're ready to go again. Our brains are the same way. Neurologically, we have to be able to give our brains a break every 90 to 120 minutes. It's good for our obviously our physical bodies as well, but it's really important for our brains, because that's when you come back, you're refreshed and suddenly you can figure things out. You can see the possibilities. You become much more resilient. So I really, really want to encourage you to do that and find a way to make that happen. Set reminders, set an alarm on your phone or your watch. Now, when we talk about restoring ourselves and well-being, there are 3 non-negotiables. One is exercise, right? And I wish we had time to talk about it in more depth, but what I'm going to say is whatever works for you is what you should do. For some people, coronavirus has given us an opportunity. We have less commuting time. People are actually taking care of themselves better. Other people are finding that they're really out of their routines. They're not able to go to the gym or the classes that they used to go to. Find whatever works for you. You do not need to be at CrossFit for an hour, 4 days a week in order to be, in shape. If walking 3 times a day for 10 minutes is what you can fit in and that works in your life right now, fabulous. Do that. Do whatever you're going to stick with. The other thing I want to mention here in terms of what you need to prevent burnout, and this is, don't log out after this, but I am giving you the biggest and most important burnout takeaway of the session, and it's going to surprise you, but it is getting enough sleep. You guys have heard the data, you've read it, you hear about it all the time. I cannot encourage you enough to try to get more rest if you're not getting enough sleep every night. You know that feeling when you get up in the morning, you've had enough rest, and when you haven't, how you function at work, when you've slept, when you haven't. Sleep is obviously very good for our physical health. It's incredibly important for our cognitive health, and it reduces stress tremendously. Remember that burnout, that's an end stage of stress. And so what we're trying to do is prevent ourselves from constantly getting into that place of high stress, right? Because that's not going to allow us to do all the things that we need to do. You guys in your jobs, particularly, anyone who's in a school setting, in a temple setting, all of you sort of in a way have all these different constituencies who you have to be constantly responding to, right? It's students, it's parents, it's colleagues, it's lay leaders. It might be the federation, all sorts of partnerships. You've got to be on to do that. You've got to be on to do those things. So you absolutely have to take care of yourself. So what I'm going to ask you to do right now, before we pivot into sort of the tactical day-to-day things that you can do in terms of your work, is I'm going to ask you right now to create a 10-day challenge for yourself. And it can be anything related to your wellness that you feel needs a little bit of a fix. So it could be that you're going to commit to 10 days, I'm going to do 10 push-ups every day. Or every day for 10 days, I'm going to substitute that bag of potato chips I have at 3 o'clock in the afternoon with a piece of fruit. Or 10 days in a row, I'm going to make sure that I have an alarm set on my phone that's going to go off at 9 o'clock at night, and it's going to remind me it's time to stop checking email, start unwinding, and get ready for, my wind down before sleep. Whatever is going to work for you. So take a minute, because I know if I tell you to do this after the session, you'll really mean to do it, but that's not going to happen at 8 o'clock. So I'm going to have you commit to it right now. But if you feel comfortable sharing it in the chat, feel free to put it in there. All right, good, Annie. Sleeping 8 hours, not being on her phone right before bed. We're going to hold her accountable to that. Anyone else? Someone just asked me a question. Oh, someone said walking daily between 4 to 6 minutes for 30 minutes. Fabulous. That's great. So someone asked me a question, and I think this is a great question, particularly for any of you who are managers. This was a manager who asked and said she's really worried that she's got some people on her team who are just working nonstop. No matter what she tells them in terms of taking care of themselves, they are probably headed toward burnout. She's not sure what to do. So thank you for asking that. And thank you for sort of like taking that sort of thoughtful perspective as a manager, because it's a problem that I hear about all the time. And this is what I usually say, and this is for anybody who does any sort of leadership, whether it's one person or a large team. What you do matters more than what you say, right? So think about what you're modeling, right? I hear all the time from people will say, I have this great manager who tells me all the time to take my vacation and to not work at night, but then I'm getting emails from them late at night, right? Or I never see them take a break. So think about, as a leader, what you're modeling, and can you even take it a step further? Can you periodically send your team a text in the middle of the day that says, hey, I know we've all been working hard, just checking in to see, you know, what you did for 15 minutes to take a break today, right? Those sorts of things. And certainly have conversations with those team members. If you see team members who are really burning the candle at both ends, working all weekend long, working late at night, call it out to them, and not in a way that makes them defensive, but to say, hey, listen, I'll just use Annie as an example. You know, Annie, I'm concerned. I see that you're often online at night, and I know that I've told you that that's not my expectation of you, but I want to talk about what's on your plate right now, what we might be able to reprioritize. I don't want to lose you. And this is really important, because what a lot of people don't realize is that it's often our best performers who burn out first, because they're least likely to jump in and say, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed. They're usually the first one to say, hey, let me step up and help out. They want to be a team player. They want to go the extra mile. And usually our leaders, they don't often hear about the folks that are burning out until they're sitting across the desk for them, telling them that they've taken another job, that they're out, right? And we don't want that to happen. So if you've got talented people who are sort of in that position, think about really having these conversations. So thank you for asking that question. Please keep the questions coming. But now I want to have you guys to have a chance to talk to each other and start talking about sort of the nitty gritty of the day-to-day, because I know that every day when you sit down at your desk, wherever it might be, your kitchen counter, wherever you're working these days, and you look at your to-do list, you are not just seeing a list of items to do. You are looking at a list of ways that you're worried you're going to disappoint people, that you're not going to be able to do enough for them, that you're not going to have enough time or energy to sort of service everybody that you service and support everybody that you support. And that is an overwhelming feeling, and it winds up in a way kind of hijacking our brain. And so I want us to take a moment and actually think about the opposite. I want you to think about and discuss with a couple of your colleagues here a day when you felt particularly productive and particularly focused. And what was it about that day that allowed you to maybe manage the overwhelm a little bit better? Okay, so now Annie is going to put everybody in groups. I'm just going to ask you if you can identify someone to report back either in the chat or verbally when we come back. That would be great. You're going to have 8 minutes, which I know is not enough time, but we're going to try to use that time well. All right. So have a great conversation. I'll see you back in 8. Welcome back.
Hi, guys.
People must be deep in conversation. They're waiting to the last second to come back.
I think this is
All right, fantastic. So you can absolutely put your sort of some of the takeaways from your conversation into the chat, but I would love it if a few people would be comfortable taking their microphones off mute and sharing with the group sort of what were the things that you talked about? What were the things that made a difference on those days that you were able, or you or the people you were speaking with, in terms of managing the overwhelm a little bit better?
I thought we had a really robust conversation. I'll share with, I was hanging out with Stephen and Robin, and we talked about time management, giving yourself little blocks of time. I'm going to do something for the next 15 minutes, or I want to give myself a deadline. I'm going to work really hard till, say, 2 o'clock, and just kind of boxing it in time helps you be productive. We also talked about knowing that some of us work from home with partners, roommates, et cetera, also working from home. And so how do we have coworkers / spouses in a space together and are acknowledging that we, maybe shouting at our computer screen on a conference call, and how can we kind of organize and facilitate that easier? And the last thing that came in the conversation was giving ourselves blocks of time without meetings. I feel like for me personally, my day is often broken up with, meeting with a team or meeting with a partner. And I find that I'm most productive if I can set aside a big block of time for just thinking and execution. I don't know
awesome.
if Robin wants to chime in there, but I thought we had a really productive conversation.
Fantastic. And you hit on a lot of the things that really do work, and we're going to reinforce some of those in a minute. So I'm so glad that time boxing really is working for you as one of the strategies.
I was just with Forrest, and we were talking about just like some of the things that, like, when you well fed, you feel more energized. And we were talking about like implementing snacking more and having that nearby, and how that can be really beneficial. So
it can. Good. I'm glad. Yeah, it makes a really big difference. Anyone else?
We were talking about, especially during this time, with having kids at home, and if your home life can be more in check, if the kids can go to school, and then you can be more productive with work and concentrate and focus.
Right, and when they're around, it's a totally different ball game. 100%. And one thing I want to mention about that, just as an aside, it wasn't necessarily part of what we're going to talk about here, but I think it's worthwhile mentioning, is that my guess is that you guys are all much harder on yourselves than you would be on anybody else. And it's really important to be compassionate with yourself. There are going to be days where you're not going to do it really well, where you are going to feel like you're really scattered, or that you yelled at your 3-year-old when you really shouldn't have yelled at your 3-year-old, right? Or you didn't take care of yourself that day, or any of those things. Just remember, tomorrow's another day. You're doing a lot. It's really, really hard what you're trying to accomplish. Think about what you would say to a friend in those situations. And kind of to Erica's point, when you're feeling that moment, maybe where you're being very critical about yourself, ask yourself what you need at that moment. Maybe you need a sandwich you haven't eaten. Maybe you need a walk. Maybe you need to talk to a colleague and to troubleshoot it. Maybe you just need to reset. You realize you need to go to bed early that night, maybe watch some TV, log out early, and start over the next day. So just be compassionate with yourself. So those are all great different things that you were all talking about. So let me just sort of expand on them a little bit for you, because what many of you were talking about, particularly what Russell was calling out, was this concept that we understand in terms of like trying to sort of put some boundaries around, some guardrails around our day. Here's how I think about it. Anyone here ever take young children, like under the age of 8, bowling? Yeah? What is the one thing that will make or break the hour you spend bowling?
Bumpers.
Absolutely right, Nancy. That's exactly right. An hour of bowling with children without bumpers, that is not going to be pretty. No, not at all. I don't care how many snacks you have. You've got to let them get a few pins down, right? We need those same sorts of guardrails on our lives. I love Alana saying for her kids, it's French fries. Okay, French fries are good too. There's nothing wrong with French fries. They help. But we do need those guardrails, right? For all different sorts of reasons. But part of it is because we have so much coming at us that we have to figure out how to get some control over our day. Because you all know that even when we're all vaccinated and we're on the other side of this, and thankfully things are looking promising that we're going to be getting there sooner than maybe we thought. But even when we get to the other side of that, our lives are going to remain really complex. Your jobs are going to remain demanding. And so we still need to figure out how to utilize our day well enough to get our priorities done so that we don't get to that place of burnout, because a burnout is often caused by pulling and pushing and constantly being interrupted and not being able to work on the things and complete the things that we need to do. And also sometimes it's caused by, not being well aligned with what you're doing, right? Because you've taken on other responsibilities. So here's what I'm going to suggest is to figure out where you have some measure of control. So what does that mean? That means thinking about being very intentional in how you prepare for your day, how you actually plan it, and then how you protect it. So if they're preparing for it, we've talked about a little bit, but I do want to just call out one other point here. How you show up for your job every day is going to be impacted by how you start your day. And many people, and I will not ask you to show by raising your hands who does this, but many people, the first thing they do when they wake up, this, right? They check their email, right? It's very instinctual to want to do that. And a lot of times we're doing that because we're high performers and we want to make sure that we're not missing anything, that we're being responsive to folks. Here's the thing, give yourself a little bit of time to keep the inbound out. And I'm going to suggest 16 minutes, only because I recently read an interesting article in Harvard Business Review that was talking about how so many of us are appreciating not having that commute. And apparently 16 minutes is the ideal commute, people have decided. So for at least 16 minutes, try to do something for yourself. For many of us, it is working out. We try to get that in the morning. But it may be that what rocks your morning is going to be making a phone call to your dad or sitting down with your 10-year-old to read a book before they either go off to school or get in front of the Zoom. The other day for me, it was honestly straightening up my house because I work on the first floor of the house. And when I have a lot of clutter around, I find it really distracting. For someone else, it's going to be maybe chopping some vegetables so that your dinner prep is already underway for later in the day. But do something to sort of make yourself feel like, okay, I'm sort of grounded now. I've done something for myself. And then check your email, then dive into work. Because even if you tell yourself you're going to check email and you're not going to respond to it, first of all, you'll probably respond. And then even if you don't, your head is shifted, your thinking, your mindset is already now there. Keep it on yourself initially. Now, let's talk about that plan in your day. And we could spend hours talking about this, but I'm going to try to give you the big highlights. So much of managing your day so that you don't feel just completely wiped at the end and overextended is knowing what your priorities are. And it's really hard because so many things on your list feel like priorities, but you've got to be absolutely brutal about your prioritizing. And that means knowing what items on my to-do list are high payoff items and what items are low payoff. It's sort of the simplest way to tease it out, right? The high payoff are basically those things that are going to have the biggest negative consequence if they don't get done, right? They're usually tied to your goals, to sort of the big picture thinking. It doesn't mean the low payoff items don't have to get done, but do you have to do them during your prime time of day? No. And that's the second point here. Think about yourself, your own rhythm. When are you at your peak time? Because it's a lot less about time management and it's much more about energy management, right? Because the time's going to pass no matter what, but we have the choice as to when we're going to do certain things. And so you're trying to preserve that energy management. So that goes to where sort of what Russell was talking about thinking about your day and what time during the day you can protect. Now, I understand that for all of you, this isn't necessarily going to work depending on the nature of your job. You can't necessarily tell everyone, hey, I'm at my peak between 8:30 and 11:30, I'm not taking a meeting with you, right? There's certain things you have to be responsive to, and you've got to take meetings at particular times or answer the phone or respond to emails. But if you're really honest with yourself, there are probably times that you can protect that time, right? So I'll use Annie as an example here. And if Annie asks me, hey, Faun, are you free for a conversation at 10 o'clock? I might say to Annie initially, Annie, listen, you know, the afternoon is better for me. Do you have any time between 1 and 3? And of course, if Annie says to me, listen, tomorrow, the only time I have is 10 o'clock. Do you think you can slip me in? Of course, I'm going to be responsive to that. But initially, I'm going to try to protect that time. And I do really try to do that. I try to do my curriculum writing or my sort of deeper activities that require that uninterrupted time during those peak times of day. Now, for many of us who are working from home, we do also have to think about the rhythms of our household and how that might fit right now as well, right? So that might shift. And also think about your work. Maybe there's certain days during the week that you can do this. Can you protect your Friday mornings, you know, when less people want meetings? So really think about those sorts of things and how you can schedule them in that manner. Some other things to really think about when you have that prioritizing really clear in your head, that makes it a lot easier to whittle your to-do list down each day. And that's one thing that's really going to help is every night, what I encourage you to do, or at the end of the day, whenever your end of day is, end of your work day, is to look at that to-do list and create another one. I'm a big fan of index cards. If you saw me right now, you'd see I have like index cards here with information for Annie, but I like index cards because I can just put something very limited on them. So take whatever it is, electronic on paper, and write down 3 things that you must do that next day. And that's the list that you're going to look at whenever you're interrupted and you have to get refocused again. So that, again, you're going to have another to-do list. You're going to look at that. Don't worry. But when you're trying to really accomplish things, and because you know that feeling, right? Where 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock rolls around and you think, how is this possible? I have been working nonstop all day, right? And how is it that I still have not accomplished the things that are most critical? It's probably because you got interrupted and you got distracted by other things that maybe were easier to do, they were more appealing to do. Again, if you put them on your calendar and time block them out, that's really going to help you get them done. Does anybody do this besides Russell? Anyone else do time blocking? A couple people. So if you haven't tried it before, I really encourage you to give it a shot. The other thing to really think about is task batching your items together. We lose a lot of time when we juggle between activities. You tend to be 80% more productive when you lump similar activities together. So if you have a bunch of phone calls to make, put them all together. If you have a bunch of writing to do, try to block that time together. And as much as you can, try to minimize those interruptions. Trust me, I'm not telling you, do not go back to your boss tomorrow and say, this woman Faun told me that I do not have to answer your email right away. I'm not looking at my email till 3 o'clock. Okay, that may not work in your job, but there are times where you can decide, I am not going to look at my email over the next hour. I know that if someone needs to reach me urgently, they'll reach me by text. Or maybe you can tell your small team, hey, I'm trying something new. I'm working on this project where I'm going to really try to sort of block out my time. I'm going to be, off, I'm not going to be checking email from 2 to 4. If you need me urgently, text me. So, right, we have to communicate about these things. And sort of that goes back to this other thing that Russell, you were pointing out about sort of being in a house with a bunch of people. And in a lot of ways, we're going to have this even when we all return to our workplaces, right? You cannot over communicate enough. This is something I was sharing a lot early in the pandemic, right? There was sort of no better time to be over communicating, but it's still true, right? A lot of times we assume that people understand what we need, or we assume that they know that they're interrupting us. I was just having this conversation last night with my family because, as I said, we have a college student now who's returned home. And so the rhythm of our day has changed. There are more interruptions. Trust me, I love having her home. Don't anybody tell her that I'm not happy to have her home. I am. But I had to talk about, okay, wait a second. I can't have everyone coming down to breakfast at a different hour when I'm downstairs working, right? We had to sort of talk about that. And so think about what are those things that you need to communicate, whether it's to your partner, whether it's to your manager, whether it's to your team, to your colleagues. So that's something to really think about. The last thing I want to sort of say here, I'm going to share a slide with you, but this is an important point because I know that many of you sometimes feel this way. I imagine you do. Oh, what just happened here? Oh, Sorry here. Oh, I just stopped the screen sharing. Let me see if I can get it back here. Well, you know what? I'm not going to waste time doing that. Let me just do this. Let me just tell you what it is. How many times has someone asked something of you and you hear yourself saying yes, and inside you are screaming, no, I don't want to do that. Yeah, I'm sorry I can't show you my great graphic, but yes, okay. Many of you, why is it? Why do you have a hard time saying no? Take your microphone off. Tell me why. Let's fess up.
Because we like to please people.
Yes, absolutely. I don't want to be a no person. I want to be a yes person, right? That's how I want to be seen. Here's the thing is that, and again, don't go back and tell everybody that I told you that you have permission to say no to everything. We work in organizations. We have to be responsive. There are times we have to say yes to things that we don't want to say yes to. But what's really critical to understand, and again, this ties back to burnout and to trying to get some more control over the things that are your priorities. Learning how to say no isn't just something that's going to help you. It's actually your responsibility. You were hired to do a certain job. You were hired to meet certain goals and accomplish certain things. And if you're not able to do that effectively because you're constantly saying yes to other sorts of things, that becomes a problem, right? So how do you do that? How do you marry those two things that Susan was talking about? How do you sort of support people, please people, or just be a good colleague and still maintain that boundary? Well, the first thing to do is that when someone asks you something, remember, you don't have to reply right away. We feel like we have to answer immediately. We don't have to answer. Get some more information. Find out what's really being asked of us. Because maybe it is something you're going to want to say yes to, but maybe it's something that either you want to say no to, you can refer them somewhere else, or you could say partly yes to and partly no to, right? So let's just say that Alana asked me, Alana says, Faun, listen, we're pulling this committee together. I would love it if you could, I'd love to have your voice, around the table. Could you be a part of this, right? And now I'm having this inner debate immediately. I like Alana, I want to help her out, but I don't really know if I have the time. I'm not sure if I'm really interested. What can I do? Alana, do me a favor. Can you tell me a little bit more about what the time expectations are? What's really going to be needed of me, right? And then Alana tells me a little bit more. I'm sort of interested, but I'm still not sure that I can really commit. So maybe I tell Alana I'm going to think about it. Say, Alana, listen, I want to check my schedule. I want to make sure that anything that I commit to, I'm really going to be able to follow through on. And maybe in the end, I come back to her and I say, listen, I love what you're doing. I'm just really concerned that I can't commit to it fully. Would it be okay if I come to meetings where you feel like I can be a particular help to you? You can give me some advance notice and I can join you for those meetings. And that way Alana knows I actually want to help. I'm really being a team player, but I'm still maintaining those boundaries and I'm maintaining my relationship with her, right? So keep in mind that you want to get some more information. You want to think about it. And if you have to say no, then you have to say no. You don't have to say no with a huge apology. Maybe I'll say to Alana, you know what, I can't do it, but you may not realize that Robin actually is dying for this opportunity. Sorry, Robin, I signed you up. And check in with Robin and see whether she might be able to help out. So learning how to do that is going to be very helpful. We have to be able to protect our day. So it's about preparing for it. It's about planning it really well. And then it's about protecting it. I want to be super mindful of the time. I know we're coming up on the top of the hour here. And I want to make sure I stop talking. So if you have any questions that we haven't answered, you have a chance to answer them. And I'm happy to stay on for anybody who wants to stay on. I'll put that out there. But the last thing I want to say is this conversation we're having today, the conversations you were having with your colleagues in the breakout rooms, don't let this be the end of the conversation. This is the sort of thing that we need to keep talking about. Educators need to be talking about burnout. Educators in particular are so overextended these days. Make sure that you're getting that sort of support. Know who your go-tos are. We need to have these conversations. So let this be sort of a jumping off point of other conversations that you'll hopefully have amongst yourselves and also amongst your colleagues in your organizations. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and ask you any questions that you didn't get a chance to ask that you want to ask now.
Sorry, I just want to thank you. I think you offered some very good concrete tools that we all can use. And some of us do, you know, sort of like piecemeal of these things. But I think the key is the consistency and the practice of it, which, because when we do it, we all know it's helpful. At least I do. So it's just always good to have a jumping off point, you know, like a spark that, I'm sorry, I didn't even mean to say spark just then, but that will like.
That was smooth, Nancy,
right.
Well done.
just keep us, you know, like a GPS that will kind of redirect, reroute, you know, or yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. No, thank you for saying that. I'm glad that was helpful. And sort of just to follow up with that, what I'll say is that, you know, when it comes to these reminders, you know, about doing different things, don't try to do it all at once. Pick one or two things that really resonated with you. It might be something a colleague said to you in the breakout room, and maybe something I shared with you, but pick one or two to focus on until you sort of get that, you know, as more of a habit, and then move on to another one. Other questions or thoughts that anybody has? All right, I know you guys have had a long day. The only thing I will say, last of all, in closing, is that if anybody has any other questions, I'm always happy to answer them. You can email me. You can get the information from Annie, but it's faun@zarge.com. I'm pretty easy to find. I do periodically write a blog about burnout. If you want to follow that, I'm happy to get that information to you. But most importantly, if you had a question or a question that you just didn't want to ask in front of the group or on a recorded session, it's really not a problem. I'm happy to have a separate conversation with you if I can be of any help. And thank you so much for all that you guys are doing. And I hope it warms up down there in Atlanta.
Thank you so much for being here, everyone. Thank you to Faun. This is really, really incredible session. And so appreciative of you all taking the time for yourself in this way as well. So we'll hopefully see you again soon.
Thanks, Annie.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.